ARPA here again, and today I'm on my summer break, and I was just thinking about some of my travels that I usually take over my summer breaks, and one place that came to mind that is really rich in its food culture is New Orleans. If you've never been, I highly recommend going there, and I had the fortune of going and meeting a wonderful chef who taught me a few things about some of the cuisine there in New Orleans. So today I'm bringing New Orleans here in my kitchen. So let's get started. One of my favorite dishes from New Orleans that I learned how to cook was the smoked andouille sausage gumbo. And so today that's exactly what we're going to be making, and it uses really simple ingredients. I've already pre-chopped some of my ingredients because it's a lot of work actually, but we're going to start off with what they call the Holy Trinity. And so every country or even state has its base when they're making any kind of stew. And so in New Orleans it happens to be onions, celeries, and green bell peppers. When you go to a place like France, for example, they have something called a mirepoix, and they usually include something like onions, carrots, and celery for their base. And you're working with some bell peppers. What you're going to do is you want to cut around the seeds, and so that's exactly what I'm doing, like so. And I'm going to go around and do the same, avoiding some of that white pit inside of the green bell pepper. And I'm going to remove the giant seed inside, and I can remove and toss this out. And all I really need to do at this point is clean some of the bell peppers inside. And I remove the white part because that's where it's usually pretty bitter. And once you have all your white parts removed, you can then start chopping and dicing away like I have to about that size. And so I'm going to get started with that. And notice that I'm keeping my green bell pepper with the skin side down, and the reason I do that is because it's a slippery side and I want to avoid any knife accidents. So which is why I put the skin side down, and when I'm cutting my knife, my blade is actually touching the inside of the bell pepper. And so you're just going to cut them into julienne pieces like so, and then you're going to chop them into, or you should dice them I should say. Chop them into small pieces, like so. And I'm going to finish this rest. So I've got my green bell peppers chopped up here. Green peppers are really great aromatics to add to dishes. And now I'm going to get started with chopping the rest of my celery. And I've already chopped about 2 or 3 stalks of celery, and I'm going to finish chopping the rest. I've already got my onions all chopped up, and I'm actually glad I did that ahead of time because I was crying my eyes out chopping those onions. They were really, really fresh. So I have 2 huge onions that I chopped up. So the onions are twice as much as the celery and the green bell peppers that we're going to use to make our Holy Trinity as our base for our gumbo. And I'm also going to be adding some chopped garlic here. I've already taken 2 cloves of garlic, chopped them up. And the star of this recipe is the andouille sausage. And so I've already pre-sliced some of the andouille sausage, and I like slicing it nice and long and diagonal like so. Now we're going to get started with the next really important step of making our gumbo. And gumbo, if you've ever had it, has a really nice brown color, and it's also a very thick stew. And so in order to get that thickness and also the color, we need to make something that's called a roux. And a roux is found in a lot of pasta sauces and a lot of soups. So normally you use equal parts oil and equal parts, or I should say fat, equal parts fat and equal parts flour. And by fats I mean things like butter or oil. So in our case we're actually going to be using a canola oil or some sort of vegetable oil. And the reason I'm using that is because it's going to be cooking for a very long time, and I want to make sure that I don't burn my roux. And so I have about a cup of oil, and I'm also going to be adding a cup of flour. And so when you're measuring your flour, you want to make sure you fluff up your flour, and you don't really press down. I take a knife, a butter knife, I use the back, and I lightly spread the flour and remove any excess. And good, that's about a cup. So before I add my flour into my oil, I'm going to make sure I turn it on high heat. And I'm going to actually wait until my oil gets pretty hot before I introduce my flour to it. Okay, so my oil is heated up. I'm going to add my flour in here, and you can actually hear it. I want to turn down my heat because I actually don't want the flour to burn. And now this is the process where we're going to make these figure eights. And we're going to keep making this until my flour starts from turning this blonde color to a nice rich brown color, and that's when I'll know my roux is ready. And so this is a way for us to cook some of that flour flavor out, and it turns into this really delicious smoky thickener for our gumbo. Okay, so I've had my roux going now for about 5 minutes, and it looks this brown. And so I'm going to want it a little darker than this, but this is the perfect shade that you're looking for to begin cooking your Holy Trinity as well as your andouille sausage. So I'm going to get started with that as well. So I'm going to let this cook some more. And now to my pot over here, on medium-high heat, I'm going to start sauteing my onions, my green bell peppers, and my celery. So I have 2 huge, large onions right there. About 4 celery stalks right there or so. And now my green bell peppers. And along with this, I'm going to be adding my andouille sausage. And so all of the flavors from the sausage is going to come out and cook along with my onions and my celery and my green bell peppers. So my roux is this perfect, rich, thick brown color, as you can see, and it's ready to be added to my pot full of my Holy Trinity as well as my andouille sausage. So you're going to turn that off, and in this pot I've got all of my ingredients cooking except for my garlic, which I'm going to add right now. So this was my minced garlic. Add all of that, and then I'm going to add some really simple seasoning to this. Okay, so first thing we need is some salt, and again my rule to that is just enough to cover the surface. We can always add more. You don't want to go overboard, especially because that andouille sausage is already pretty spicy. And then what I'm going to be doing is adding some red chili flakes, and that's my rice ready to go back there in the background. So I'm going to add some chili flakes. I like this really spicy. Again, if you are not into the spicy, you can definitely omit that part. And some ground black pepper. That's really important. Now, when I went to New Orleans, I definitely stocked up on some really good Cajun seasoning. So whatever your favorite Cajun seasoning is, it's got a variety of things blended into it, from paprika to cayenne pepper and a bunch of other herbs. Go ahead and add that to your pot. So I'm going to add a lot of this delicious Cajun seasoning that I got from New Orleans. Right. And you can always add more later if you feel like it needs some more seasoning. I'm going to mix this up and prepare to add my roux into this pot. Now I'm ready to add my nice dark roux to my pot. I'm going to include all of that in there. You can see how thick that is, and it almost looks like chocolate sauce. And that's exactly the color you want. So about 8 cups of vegetable broth. And then I'm going to let this cook for about another 30 minutes or so, until all the flavors come together and my gumbo thickens up. It's so good, and you can see the color and the delicious andouille sausage in here. Everything looks really good. And I love serving this with some plain white rice. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Alright, so I'm going to take my gumbo, top it up with some white sticky rice, a little bit of parsley on the top, and we're ready to taste this. Definitely takes me back to New Orleans. And I hope, and I really encourage a lot of you to let your stomach guide your travels, and you'd be amazed at some of the incredible dishes that you're going to taste. Thank you. Join me again, and I'm including the recipe right after this.